Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist and I'd like to welcome you to episode 359 of the FCPA Compliance Report. The FCPA Compliance Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop for all compliance-related services. Today I have with me Jonathan Benson. Jonathan is with ShowCard, and ShowCard has a very interesting new tool using blockchain. It's blockchain-based identity management. It reduces costs and duplication for identity management, certainly can reduce fraud. It allows improved management of anti-money laundering. This tool is currently utilized in the financial services space, but I see a lot of application for it in the commercial world, particularly around this concept of identity management. And it's certainly going to be important going forward for your third parties and those companies who do business with you through your supply chain. It's a fascinating exploration of innovative uses of blockchain. We discuss blockchain, how it can help you with identity management, how it can reduce fraud and improve overall AML management. It's something that you need to consider as a compliance professional going forward. The FCPA Compliance Report is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back for another episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. Today, I have with me Jonathan Benson. Jonathan is with a company called ShowCard, who has a very intriguing product that's generally based on blockchain. So I was lucky enough to be able to visit with Jonathan to have him describe what the company is, what the product is, and then we're going to try to explore how this product can be what I think one of the cutting edge innovations in technology going forward. So Jonathan, with that introduction, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the company, what you guys do, and who your primary customer base is at this point.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tom. Like you said, I'm with ShowCard, and ShowCard is a startup that's really bringing together, two powerful technologies that are kind of very, top of mind right now, and that's mobile technology and blockchain. And we can talk a bit about those. But basically, on the mobile side of things, We're leveraging the fact that mobile devices are a very secure way of storing data, right? We've heard about the stories of, the FBI asking for Apple to get into these things. So we have something that has the ability to store data very securely and be personal to that individual. So we combine that with the power of blockchain. And for those who aren't familiar with what blockchain is, I think what comes to mind first when people hear of blockchain is they hear Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin has, all various positive and negatives out there that you hear in the news. But the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and others are actually an application that sits on top of blockchain. And blockchain simply is basically a distributed ledger, right? So you can think of it as a kind of a form of database, right? So transactions are recorded in this a very sequential way, and that's why you get the term blockchain. And usually these blockchain systems are public, so anyone can access this data and verify it, the data and the transactions, right? So how we put those together is basically the individual user can self-certify their data and secure it using advanced cryptography and things like that are on the mobile device, and then share hashes of that, which are basically verification records, to the blockchain. Now, we don't actually store the individual's data on the blockchain. It's just the verification of the data. So the nice thing about this is the user is always in control of what data they share with a bank, really any third party, right? And so when you kind of think about this use case, there's a lot of other potential use cases that come up. Of course, for us right now, the banking one that we had talked about earlier is very interesting, especially if you think about how banks do KYC right now, right? KYC is for, know your client, and how they actually verify that you are who you say you are. So an example of how this works, and please stop me if you have any questions along the way here. is okay. So let's take an example. So Bank A does a KYC. You open an account. You have to prove with some information that you give to them that you are who you say you are, so they can set up this account, and they kind of stamp that account as, this is Jonathan's account, and he's done given us all the necessary information to open that account. Now, let's say a couple of months down the line, you go to Bank B and you do that same process. It is a completely separate process. And you have to do that process over again. And actually, this process actually could be completely separate within a bank brand. So let's say you're opening a checking account one point, and then you want to open a brokerage account a few months later. Those systems are often separate. So you've got to do this whole process all over again. And so you think of the process of sharing your personal information data with a bank, and they have to verify that. That's kind of exactly what we're doing, leveraging the blockchain. So I share my information with this bank, and now the verification can be up on this blockchain and be stamped by the bank saying, okay, yes, we have proven that Jonathan is who he says he is, and that verification is on the blockchain. And the benefit of it being in the blockchain is now Bank B or a separate line of business within the bank can actually leverage that verification without having to have separate interfaces to that data, right? So right now we have these very siloed data stores where people do that. So the other advantage is that none of the personal information data is actually stored in any sort of central database. So you hear about all these breaches going on right now where people have hacked into these companies and they've gotten access to these massive databases of user data. That stuff doesn't exist anymore, right? We just have verifications that are on a public ledger that anyone can access and see who's verified. Taking that use case further, we could actually leverage the fact that we're on a blockchain and leveraging cryptocurrencies and other things like that to actually pay for those things. So now that Bank A has done this certification and it's stamped and it's on the blockchain, when Bank B wants to actually leverage that, they can charge back for it sorry, I was getting a little bit of feedback there. Not have to do their own, so they'll charge Bank A for already have done doing that process. So that's in a nutshell where we see it. But we've also can see this in other use cases where you have to share personal data, such as airline industries where you're actually doing ticketing and going through security. You need to share various forms of information such as driver's license or passport data and things like that, right?
Right. So does this really describe the package of what you've the website described as identity management?
Yeah, and the reason why identity management is involved with this is because the term BYO right now is very popular, where it started, I think, with bring your own devices, where people wanted the choice of hardware they were bringing into works. We're taking that a little step further with bring your own identity, right? You choose which pieces of your identity you want to share. But because of that, we can also, because the proofing of your identity is very secure, and very verifiable in a public way, we can also use that for identity management too. And this is kind of the basis of our enterprise product. I talk about some of the more consumer bank use cases, but we have an enterprise product that you can think of that because it's a very strong way to prove someone's identity. We can leverage that for a way of logging into systems. Right now, there's a trend of kind of trying to get rid of passwords or add multi-factor authentication onto systems as a way to up the security without relying on passwords. Because as many folks who are listening might know, that passwords aren't really much of security at all anymore, right? Tons of systems get broken into. People often reuse the same passwords. Cracking passwords is very easy now. So if we say that passwords aren't any sort of security at all, and we want to add now a second factor of authentication, it's really only one factor again, because if you say passwords are basically the same as a username, you're only on the second factor. But what if we have a cryptographic way to very strongly prove someone is who they say they are without actually supplying a username or a password at all? And we can also couple that that proofing with using biometrics such as things like the fingerprint or the facial scanning that are built into the new phones for access control, but also we could do liveliness facial recognition to kind of further prove the person holding the device is who they say they are. So that's kind of the basis of the enterprise product, where we can kind of merge that with identity management as well.
So, Jonathan, one of the things shown on the ShowCard website is an application for airlines. And it basically describes that a passenger uploads their travel documents, which are encrypted and hashed on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then the passenger is provided with a single travel token, which can be presented to the airline in order to call up these documents using a public key. And any airline connected to the system can use this to verify the identity of the person when they present this token. So in my world, one of the biggest issues is it's a little bit beyond know your customer, but I guess it is know your customer, but it's in terms of know your supplier, know your third-party sales agent, make sure that they are not a politically exposed person or employee of a state-owned enterprise or on some other bad guys list. And it strikes me that this concept that you guys have, if it works for an airline, it certainly should work for a commercial organization to help verify that their third-party sales agent is exactly who they say they are. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's right. Right. So you remember earlier when I talked about how once you present your information, it can be verified and sort of stamped as being verified by those various third-party industries. That is kind of limitless. So you could say, okay, I'm going to use ShowCard for proving the identities of partners, employees, whatever, right? And I'm going to look for these three verifications when this person presents their data. It has to be verified by my own organization, the other third party that I trust, whatever rules that your line of business might have. But you can do that in a way that can be completely centralized. Well, when I say centralized, you don't have to build separate interfaces to each one of those organizations, right? It's all a simple, I go to the blockchain for this user's identity information, and has it been verified, right? And that can be expanded on sort of limitlessly.
So how is ShowCard scalable, if that's a fair question?
Yeah, so, that's one of the things that's very, I think, neat about ShowCard is because when you, if people are familiar with actually developing applications on the blockchain, one of the things that comes up is kind of scalability and latency. If anyone's actually ever done any sort of purchasing on Bitcoin or anything like that, you know that the transactions actually now take a long time because of the number of users on there. So transactions to be verified can take anywhere of 10 plus minutes, right? So when you think of an identity world where people are wanting to access data and systems very quickly, that's not really going to scale at all. So a lot of the engineering background of ShowCard actually comes from the very busy days of Yahoo, when they were dealing with millions and millions of users, high transaction rates, and building scalable systems. So we actually have that background from an engineering perspective, and we've applied that to the benefits of blockchain, but we've kind of extrapolated some of the issues and shortcomings of blockchain with kind of, what is our secret sauce there? So we are able to do, without getting into too much of the details of the technology, we're able to do very quick transactions with low latency that otherwise would have problems on blockchain.
So, Jonathan, unfortunately, we're getting near the end of our time, but I was wondering if anyone wants more information on ShowCard, where should they go or how can they find out about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I realize a lot of these concepts are a little bit tough to digest without visuals. So yeah, we do encourage you to go to our website. It's ShowCard, and that's SHOCARD.com, and take a look at some of our solutions there. Feel free to click the links to download a white paper or reach out to the sales folks to get a demo. We'd be happy to speak with you.
So, Jonathan, I want to thank you for taking the time to visit with me today. And this is going to be, I find your product really fascinating, and I see a lot of implications beyond what you guys have up even on the website. So I hope that we can continue this conversation as ShowCard grows and its customer base grows, because I really see the concept you guys are putting forward in terms of identity management is absolutely critical to the greater compliance world as well.
I agree, yeah, and I look forward to that further conversation, Tom.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. If you have listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate our podcast, as it would help in our rankings and also help get the word out about the oldest podcast around in compliance. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Thank you again for listening to this episode, and I hope you will join me again for another episode next week on the FCPA Compliance Report. The FCPA Compliance Report is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.